Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at Stormhaven. Why? Because it was played at Rage, it did really well, and that is why we're taking a good look at it. So this is, I believe, the top Rage players deck. I, for the life of me, just blanked on the name for a moment, but it's fine. Link in the description to this deck will of course be there. But I've found it's very okay on ladder. It's definitely more a tournament orientated deck, especially a non-ban tournament where you can really target your opponents. But it is quite fun to play, and that's the main thing I look for in a good deck. If it is fun, if it does okay, even if it's at just below 50% win rate, it's still going to be good as a fun deck, so why not? Anyway, we'll get right into the games and check it out. So our first matchup here is against Forest, because Forest is Forest.
Is fighting and despair all you know? Time for me to prove myself.
There's been some, let's say, wonky decks on ladder in the last day or so since I made this video. It is a little weird. Seeing decks that you wouldn't normally see around. But as always, nothing too shocking. Passing turn 1 really isn't great, but when you don't have a choice, I guess that's all you can do. Although Snow White turn 2 is pretty good. Especially against Forest, where you really want something to contest the board early. And of course, the Heavenly Hound fits really well in the next turn if they do get rid of the Snow White. Which with Airbound, they're bound to do, so... I mean, if it was me, I probably would have just rammed the Fairy and then used Airbound to remove White completely, but I suppose they just want to ping that damage. So, perfect turn for Dog. Why not? We get a little hound with wings. He's pretty adorable. May, perfect 50-50. I wish I had that luck sometimes. Be nice to be able to hit that 50-50 every single time.
Your evil deeds end now.
What we do have though, again, Priest of the Cudgel. Great way to remove Forest followers, while at the same time avoiding the damage from Bramble.
Oh, come on!
And we get that couple of damage in, which is what Storm really needs. Fortunately, I found that with this Storm deck, I've been having a lot of trouble getting consistent games on 6, but I think that is more the matchups more so than the actual deck. I'm finding that quite often you'll be ended up dragging the game out a little longer than you'd really want it to be, but still having some success or very, very close matches, which is a lot more enjoyable than just either steamrolling or being steamrolled. I'd much rather have a close match and know that we both had, you know, pretty good hands and were able to perform nicely, than be completely dominated. Or even do the complete dominating. It's not much fun if your opponent doesn't get to really do anything substantial.
Oh, come on!
I mean, they need a chance, right?
Battles are such lonesome things.
Hey, let's play!
Elf Song, little bit difficult. Nothing I shouldn't be able to handle though.
Am I?
I mean, next turn's gonna go pretty well. Plenty of options here. I could have easily dropped the Winged, but I think Jane is fine. Or John, Jane, I don't know. I still don't agree with how these naming schemes are, but who knows how life will be. Getting that damage in, 6 to their face, leaves them pretty viable to Divine Birdsong and Winged Sentinel, along with a follow-up Dance of Death when we need it. And leaving any damage on board is practically useless.
That is... What in the...
So I don't make a great play here. Probably would have been better off going with the Dance of Death, making sure they couldn't use any fairy combos here, because that is a huge risk, especially when they draw or have Fairy Whispers, which is really difficult. But they are pretty much forced to deal with my board, because the odds of them being able to deal my face enough damage in this turn is reasonably low. Even with fairies.
Make yourself useful.
I mean, it was close. They really only needed another good boost, but I think it was enough just to hold out there. And buy us enough time to drop Tauros, which I think is why I actually played that other combo there a moment ago, because the Tauros setup for that turn was a little bit quicker than going the other way. It was also a little more risky, but it paid off, so that's the important part. Our next match, and a fun one at that, Sword. Sword always keeps you on your toes when you're playing a more aggressive deck, like Stormhaven. Just because they are so good at doing what they do. And of course they have the wonderful Albert sleeves, which I wish I had myself, but I'm just too poor to buy all the pre-built decks like that. Hopefully we'll get some nice leader ones later on. So we do start off with an okay hand. Being able to play that globe out basically is not bad. Beast Call turn 2 into a pretty solid turn 3. We've got a couple different choices, all of which are good. The only difficult part is that we can't deal with these storm followers and stuff at the moment, making it a little bit of a disadvantage.
Let's speed things up.
Stop! No! No!
But as soon as our beast calls and stuff are able to be played, we'll be looking at a very nice game. All we need to do is hold out this turn, and then hopefully we'll be able to return the pressure back on them. The only real disadvantage is going to be the risk of Albert killing me quickly. So Perseus plus another 3 damage, so drops me to 7. I'm not at risk of dying next turn, even to a Juliet, as long as I clear as much of this board as I possibly can. And with what I've got here, that is quite possible to do. So making sure to get rid of everything, because that Juliet threat would be absolutely horrible. 6 damage on 5 is just terrible for me. But of course, Luminous Mage makes my stuff even worse. Although, Amulets will be proccing next turn, so that's a plus. We are going to get some nice storm damage along with the good body. And combo that with an Evolve, and we're actually going to be looking at a very, very solid turn. I'm not concerned with that 2-1 being evolved. I mean, the gain that it's going to get isn't going to be substantial enough to really affect me. Even with an Albert drop, it would have to be like Albert Quickblader or something, I think. And even then, I don't think it would end the game. Well, it might actually. Yeah, Albert Quickblader probably would have with the Evolve. No, because they couldn't evolve Albert, so that wouldn't work either. Okay. Just thinking ahead. Of course, they go for as good a trade as they're going to get for that turn. I am out of evolves, which against Sword is not a great spot to be in. But Hollow Dogma does make this play a little more bearable. And being able to play a couple of 2-drops next turn isn't always a bad thing. Probably should have played Princess Snow White. Although playing this 2-drop can set up for a next turn lethal if we can survive the board a little bit. I mean, we have 5 damage alone with the Winged Sentinel and the Prayer, Pinion Prayer. And if the 2 damage had survived, we would have lethal. But, of course, they have what they need to get rid of everything. So my next option is probably just to Tauros the board, maybe? Because that thing will survive quite nicely, while at the same time making it hard for them to go for lethal. Even Juliet here, they would have had to have Juliet plus a 2-drop Storm just to get lethal. The odds of them having combos like that are quite low too, so I was banking on the fact they probably wouldn't be able to do anything here. So, not so great a turn. We do get to trade twice while getting a little bit of damage in. I would have liked to have just won the game, but that wasn't going to happen, and I couldn't risk being killed by Albert next. Well, actually, I was going to die from Albert either way if they actually had it, but I couldn't risk dying to something small and insignificant. And fortunately for me, they didn't have Albert. Which was pretty lucky looking at it. Getting us damage, really important. Leaving them on 1.
Crystals of snow shimmer in the night.
The odds of them being able to win here, fairly high, just because the odds of them having Albert or another really good 3 would have been pretty easy to do. Luckily, I think we stalled out just enough that they weren't able to do anything. So, with a little bit of luck and a little bit of magic, Stormhaven comes out on top. And last but not least, against Rune. Poor little Daria.
Time to shine, Daria.
Pretty good hand, all 2 drops, can't go too wrong with that. But getting just the Beast Claw on its own was enough, so dropping other things is just par for the course, especially against Rune. Even if it's Burn Rune or Earth Rune or whatever, you really want to just take what you've got here, instead of trying to play a bunch of small 2 drops. Plus, searching out anything you can actually get isn't a bad option. And if it is Burn, Blackened Scripture is perfect for dealing with that. But when you see Angelic Snipe, you can usually pretty quickly assume it's either going to be a Daria variant or a D-Shift variant, more likely D-Shift. Or Summon Snowmen, so probably Conjure Force. Or some kind of variation of Conjure Force. You never want to leave snowmen alive as much as possible. Making sure to remove them is quite important. The less snowmen they have, the less ways they have to kill you.
For the good stuff.
This is real scarf weather.
Next turn, we're going to have a pretty good chance at actually clearing out this entire board if we want to. Do make a small mistake, honestly. Well, not really. We get the same value either way that way. I do decide to leave up 2 snowmen. A little bit of a risk, but assuming turn 5 would be Conjure Force play, they're not going to be playing any spells with it. The odds of them actually playing a spell on 0 on turn 5 here is quite low. So the risk was pretty minimal. Fortunately, Fate's Hand was at 1. They did have a second Fate's Hand, which kind of sucks for me. If they had have had Conjure Force, they wouldn't have been able to take advantage of that though. So, I mean, they could have really hurt me. Luckily, they didn't. They just didn't have what they needed. And better for me, I can set up over a couple turns and hopefully lead to victory with Taurus. The prayer return feels bad, but turn 7 winged and prayer isn't going to matter. So all we got to hope is they can't D-shift on turn 7, and we can pretty much claim victory already. So, prayer, Gruta, hit face for 3, ram another 4 if we want to. Just so if they do play a ward or something, we can quite easily just play our own Gruta and get the 3 damage to face. But they must realise that we've won already, so awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button and subscribe. Check out the deck list in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.